When you hear Pirates of the Caribbean, you probably think of Jack Sparrow and Hollywood adventures. But long before the movies, the Caribbean was the center of the real Golden Age of Piracy. These weren't charming rogues, they were desperate sailors, ruthless outlaws, and fierce rebels. And among them stood three who became legends: Blackbeard, Calico Jack, and Anne Bonny, the Golden Age of Piracy. To understand their world, you need to picture the early 1700s. Europe was expanding across the seas, filling ships with silver, gold, sugar, and rum, then sending them back across the Atlantic. But after wars between empires, thousands of sailors found themselves unemployed. Naval ships were shrinking, merchant captains paid poorly, and conditions on board were brutal. For many, piracy was less about adventure and more about survival. A pirate ship promised freedom, equal shares of plunder, votes for captains, and a break from the rigid, cruel discipline of the Navy. But freedom came at a cost. Piracy meant living outside the law, hunted by every empire that ruled the seas. Most pirates' careers lasted only a few years before capture or death. This was the Golden Age of Piracy, roughly 1650 to 1730, when names like Blackbeard and Anne Bonny struck fear into entire colonies. Blackbeard, the demon of the seas. Of all the pirates, none were more feared than Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard. He was a towering man, nearly 6.5 feet tall, with a thick black beard that gave him his name. Blackbeard understood the power of image. Before battle, he tied slow-burning fuses into his beard and lit them, so smoke and sparks framed his face like a monster out of nightmares. Sailors swore he looked more demon than man. Blackbeard captained the Queen Anne's Revenge, a captured French warship outfitted with 40 cannons. With it, he became the terror of the Caribbean. In May 1718, he blockaded Charleston, South Carolina, stopping every ship that entered or left the harbor. He demanded medicine as ransom, and the entire city was paralyzed until he got it. Despite his savage reputation, Blackbeard wasn't reckless. He preferred intimidation to slaughter, often convincing ships to surrender without a fight. But his luck ended later that same year. The Royal Navy cornered him off the coast of North Carolina. In the final battle, Blackbeard fought like a man possessed. Witnesses claimed it took 5 musket shots and over 20 sword wounds before he finally collapsed. His severed head was displayed from a ship's bow as a warning. The demon of the seas was dead. Calico Jack, the pirate of style. While Blackbeard embodied terror, John Rackham, better known as Calico Jack, had a very different reputation. He wasn't the strongest nor the most successful pirate, but he left his mark with his flamboyant style. His nickname came from the brightly patterned calico clothes he wore, setting him apart from the typical rough sailors. Rackham began his career under the famous pirate Charles Vane. When the crew mutinied against Vane's harsh leadership, Rackham seized command. His pirate flag, a skull above 2 crossed swords, would become one of the most iconic symbols of piracy. Calico Jack's raids were smaller than Blackbeard's, but he became infamous for something else. His ship carried 2 of the most legendary female pirates in history, Anne Bonny and Mary Read. Anne Bonny, the pirate who broke the rules. Born around 1700 in Ireland, Anne Bonny grew up in the colonies with a fiery spirit. Stories tell of her hot temper, her defiance of authority, and her refusal to live a quiet domestic life. She married young but left her husband for the excitement of piracy, joining Calico Jack on his voyages. On board, Anne disguised herself in men's clothing, fighting with pistols and cutlasses alongside the crew. She quickly earned a reputation for her ferocity in battle. Unlike most women of her time, Anne carved her own path, refusing to be confined by society's rules. Mary Read, the pirate in disguise. Sailing with Anne was another remarkable figure, Mary Read. Mary had spent much of her life disguised as a man, even serving in the military under the name Mark. When she turned pirate, she revealed her identity only to those she trusted. Like Anne, she proved herself fearless in combat, earning respect from the crew. Together, Anne Bonny and Mary Read became a symbol of piracy's unexpected equality. On the high seas, what mattered wasn't gender, but bravery, and both women had plenty of it. The fall of Calico Jack's crew. But piracy was a short-lived career. In October 1720, Calico Jack's ship was surprised by a British pirate hunter. Most of the crew were drunk and surrendered quickly, But Anne Bonny and Mary Read refused to give in. Armed with pistols and swords, they fought fiercely until they were overwhelmed. The entire crew was captured and sentenced to hang. Before Calico Jack's execution, Anne Bonny visited him in prison. Her final words were cold and unforgettable. "If you had fought like a man, you need not have been hanged like a dog." Anne herself was spared execution because she was pregnant. After that, her fate becomes a mystery. Some say her wealthy father pulled strings to release her, and she lived the rest of her life quietly. Others claim she died in prison. Mary Read wasn't so lucky. She died of illness before her sentence could be carried out. The legacy of the real pirates of the Caribbean, Blackbeard, Calico Jack, Anne Bonny, and Mary Read all met grim ends, but their legends survived. They became larger-than-life figures in books, folklore, and eventually Hollywood films. But their real stories remind us of the truth. Piracy wasn't glamorous. It was dangerous, violent, and often desperate. Yet for many, it was also about freedom, a rebellion against the harsh rule of empires and the rigid hierarchy of the seas. Today, these pirates remain symbols of defiance. Blackbeard is remembered as the demon of the seas. Calico Jack lives on through his flag. Anne Bonny and Mary Read endure as proof that even in the 1700s, women could defy every expectation and fight as equals. That's the story of the real pirates of the Caribbean. Not Hollywood fantasy, but real men and women who risked everything for freedom on the high seas.